Hello, and welcome to the Unlocking Behaviour Change podcast, the show all about psychology and changing behaviour. My name is Jamie West, and I'm a writer, performer, and musician, and I'm joined by Professor Emeritus of UCL, Robert West. How are you, Robert?
I'm great, thank you, as always.
So we are talking about decision-making in this season, and in this clutch of episodes, we are talking about emotions. So we're going to carry on with that this week. And I thought we'd start by talking about the emotions we have before starting a decision process or right at the very beginning, because oftentimes we can feel so overwhelmed by the decisions that are before us. It has impacts on how we make that decision or even just procrastinate and don't make that decision. That's right, isn't it? What I said is just right.
It is right, yeah. Let me break it down a little bit. So first of all, there's difficult or tricky or uncomfortable decisions that we have to make where you are already, therefore, in a state of conflict or stress or emotion at the point at which you're framing the decision, going back to our facet framework, frame, assess, compare, enact, time. Right at the beginning, the situation that you're in is stressful, and the decision is stressful. And then, in addition to that, you've got it may sound quite similar, but it's actually quite different. You've got the fact that the decision is an emotional decision in and of itself. So you're in a situation, for example, where you're feeling angry about something. And that anger is part of is leading to the decision as to what shall I do now, or should be. Is sometimes you don't actually form a decision; you just do something that you later regret, or fear, or love, or whatever. But going back to, I think, the thing that you were mostly alluding to there, which is being overwhelmed in a way by a decision on account of it being a really potentially impactful decision. Getting the decision right is important. And therefore you feel emotion about that, about the fact that the consequences of the decision are something that really matter to you. Then that's going to very often frame the way that you approach it. And so, as you rightly say, in some situations, people will put off the decision because they don't want to think about it, for example, or because they don't know where to start in making the decision, or because they fear that in making the decision that they will be committing to something that has risks attached to it and has potentially negative consequences. So, as you rightly say, for that reason and the idea that also decisions can arise from emotions, you've got a very powerful role for all sorts of emotions in the decision process.
So right at the outset of making any decision, there is usually an emotion or often an emotion that has led us to make a decision in the first place. So we're already perhaps somewhat in the throes of an emotion when we have to make a decision. So we're not just starting from a neutral point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, going back to the sort of ways in which decisions present themselves to us as opportunities, threats, and tasks and so on. Threat, the clue is in the name. It involves emotion. Opportunities involve emotion, and so on. Let's take this sort of emotion-triggered or emotion-led decision-making, where it's the emotion that's the starting point. In that kind of situation, then essentially your goal is the reason humans have got to where we are today is because we didn't react immediately to the emotion. And we did step back and say, hang on a minute, what do I really want in this situation? What would be good? Even if you're thinking about it purely selfishly, what would be good for me? And so you step back and it's not that you set the emotion to one side, because there may well be a good reason why you're experiencing the emotion, but the emotion is feeding in to a decision-making process, which could result in you doing nothing. Just saying, okay, let it go. whatever. But it seems such a sort of really simple and obvious thing to say, but every day, you will encounter situations where people have allowed the emotion to dominate the decision. And even when they tried in a way to sort of stop themselves doing something, they didn't succeed. They didn't step back enough. And so, you in fights, for example, that you see sort of outside pubs and so on, fortunately not very often, but, what you might see is two people facing up against each other. They're both angry. They both feel disrespected or whatever, something, someone's done something, and they're both angry with each other. And there is a decision, you can almost kind of see the decision-making process going on there, where it's walk away or, get involved in a fight. And they start to walk away. But it's still kindling. And then they look back and so on, and then they come back and they fight. And so even when you treat it as a decision problem, even when the smart part of your brain is going, there's nothing to be gained here by following my emotions on this, and everything to be gained by not doing it. Still, the decision process gets overwhelmed by the emotion, and that's a very common, very dangerous, very maladaptive way of operating.
Yeah, I think that's something that probably everybody's seen at some point. The fight looks like it's about to begin, then one person wants to walk away, then they do, but then they come back. And our emotions are extremely powerful. Managing our emotions is extremely difficult for most humans. It's not very straightforward. We do have this push and pull between our intellects and our emotions. And as you say, it's not about sort of completely setting aside emotions. It's often about acknowledging them, but then choosing what we want to do with those. And sometimes, of course, it's about waiting for an emotion to subside, which is something that is quite difficult for us. And people who've done mindfulness and meditation know that a lot of that practice is about watching thoughts and emotions rise and fall. And I'm pretty sure that it doesn't matter how experienced you are, it still can be a challenge. Even people who are really experienced meditators and mindfulness people, I've heard them report that it can still be really difficult.
It really is always a challenge, and it's always work in progress. That's the thing to remember, is that at certain times you feel you've kind of got it cracked. You've got control, or at least you anticipate that you will be in control when situations arise. You've got a perspective on things and so on. And then your flipping computer, does something really annoying, and you're right back in there with the frustration and the anger and the throwing the printer out the window. So not that I ever did that, but you will remember that there were a couple of printers that certainly suffered some damage in the bad old days. But and then you're okay again. It's always work in progress, and that's okay. It's just worth remembering that, okay, it's a bit like, I don't know, dieting or exercise or whatever. It's a lifelong mission.
But there are times when decision making is a staggered process. As we say, it takes place over time. So there are times when you may be in the throes of an emotion, but you don't have to make a decision at that point. Let's take it away from sort of something like a fight outside a pub, but more to a decision that people may have in a workplace, in a meeting. And there are times when you can say, actually, we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this next week. Oh, emotions are running high on this. Let's take a breather. Let's take a coffee break. And that pausing, just giving yourself that time can be really helpful.
Absolutely. Again, I sort of feel that we're saying things that are kind of obvious and people know, but this is one of the great things about psychology, is that it's one thing to know it And it's another thing to be reminded of it and for it to be salient at crucial moments. And so it's such an important thing that it does bear constantly repeating and elaborating the idea of timeout. Just, okay, let's take a break. Let's move out of this situation. Let's defuse this situation, because I might be overstating it, but I'm not sure. But it is rarely, very, very, very rarely, if ever, the case that you should be making a decision at a time of heated emotions and allowing the emotions to dictate the decision you make. That's so rarely a good idea that, I think it's worth bearing in mind that, if you are in, your if-then rule could be, if I'm feeling really strongly about something, then the best thing I can do is not decide on something important right now. Just wait.
I want to play devil's advocate there, because in an earlier podcast, you spoke about when people are stopping smoking, sometimes they may make a decision. I'm going to click my fingers like that. I don't know if that reads. Click. They make a decision they just, right now I'm going to stop. And that must be quite a strong emotion. And you did say that people who make a decision immediately often are quite successful.
Oh, well spotted on that one. But I don't think those decisions are made with strong emotion. I think they're made with something else. It's not really an emotion. It's not, oh my God, I'm so angry with myself, or I'm so fearful, or I'm so in love, or I'm so, you think about all the emotions that, one could be referring to. In that moment, you've made more of a mental shift of, oh, hang on a minute, what am I doing? This is nuts. So I don't think those kinds of, I don't think that sort of spontaneous decisions and emotion-led decisions are the same thing at all. I would say that in fact, I don't know this, one could do some research to find out, but at that moment where a person is making that decision to stop smoking and they do it straight away, I don't think there is a period, they are in a state of high emotion. Quite the opposite. I think they're in a state of some focus and clarity. Essentially, the scales have been lifted from their eyes. They go, I get it. Okay.
That makes me think of the times when I've decided to stop reading the news every time I pick up my phone. Right? Because that's kind of a habit that I was in. Every time I'd pick up my phone, I'd check the news, I'd check my email, I'd check my WhatsApp, I'd check maybe a couple of other websites as well. And this is just every time I pick up my phone for any reason. I might be picking up my phone to set my alarm. I might be picking up the phone just to look at a map or something. But then I would do all of these things every single time. And there was a time, I think I was sitting in Kew Gardens, which is a relatively calming place to be. Well, it's practically paradise on earth, if you ask me. I was sitting there and thinking, what am I doing? Read the news. This is poisoning me constantly with sort of negativity, and it's making me feel terrible. And of course, I'm obliged to say the news and good journalism is so important, but I don't need to read it every time I pick up my phone. And I could feel that it felt like a poisonous impact on me. And I saw it really clearly how it was affecting me personally. And then I stopped going on the home news pages for about a year on my phone. And I didn't have a block. I didn't have something that blocked websites from me. I knew that wasn't going to work. I just decided, I know this is not working for me at this point in time. And yeah, I went about a whole year, almost never looking at the home pages of the news sites that I'd usually looked at.
So let me ask you then, in that, let's sort of take this as a scales lifted from the eyes, a sort of Damascene moment of clarity or of decision made in the moment, like the decision to stop smoking. Then you implement it and you do it straight away, and it lasts. What emotion was driving that decision?
It's a really good question because it's hard to remember. I think I did feel some frustration with how I previously had been behaving. Some frustration. I felt some anger there was quite a lot of anger towards the people writing headlines that were specifically designed to make me feel fearful in order that I would look at their website. So I felt sort of furious in some ways, but I also felt clear. I could clearly see that this is what was happening. So it was a mixture of recognizing all the emotions that were playing on me, but also a moment of clarity, as you sort of said earlier on.
I think there's the distinction, I think, because I think there's emotion clouding your judgment, and there's emotion clarifying your perspective. And not that I can get inside your head there, but I would suggest that maybe we could reframe the point that I was trying to make about not making decisions in moments of heightened emotion, meaning heightened and strong emotion, which clouds judgment, but emotion that at a level that clarifies judgment. And it goes to something that I was talking about last time, I think, which was Janison Mann's book on decision-making and the concept of vigilant decision-making. And, just to reiterate it, they talk about different modes of decision-making under different levels of stress and emotion. And they talk about the sort of headless chicken mode, where you just flip from one to another, talk about the sort of tunnel vision mode, both of which arise from the sort of stress that we're talking about at the start of a decision or during the decision process. And what they're striving for, what we're all striving for, is vigilant decision-making. But the thing about vigilant decision-making is not that it's emotionless, but that there is a level of emotional arousal and emotion there which clarifies. So and then the other mode would be like this sort of complacency where you just feel fine. And you shouldn't feel fine. You should feel something because things are not fine. And so vigilant decision-making is this scenario where, yes, there is some level of emotion, there is some level of arousal and so on, but it's that at a level that clarifies judgment as opposed to clouds it.
I like that. Clarification versus clouding. Is your emotion clouding your judgment, or is it clarifying it? Although it's very interesting when one is very angry. I've noticed the feeling that I have, and I'm sure many others have this, is that when you're angry, you sort of think, I'm right, especially if you're sort of in an argument with somebody, you feel, I'm right, I will never change how I think, and I'm so sure I'm right. And that is, your brain's telling you that, and it's very convincing. But if you skip forward a few hours, say, and things have settled down, you go, oh, actually, maybe I wasn't totally right. Maybe you were right, but maybe you weren't totally. You definitely have a more nuanced perspective. So it depends on the kind of emotion that you're in the grip of in some ways.
Yes, it does. And I think we're developing a theme here around, at times of a level and type of emotion or that is going to cloud your judgment, don't be making decisions at that time. Don't be at least acting on decisions at that time. Keep your powder dry. Hold your fire, and see and allow time, further thought, further reflection. Sometimes, as you say, just time to pass, and then revisit it. And as an academic, I know that this is, I have applied this principle most of the time, I think, to my benefit, where I will get the reviews of a paper that I've written. And my instinctive reaction is, these people are a bunch of idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. That is really annoying. And I'm just going to write my response in a way that reflects that. And I don't. I stop and I wait and I leave it. And then I read the reviews again. And I think, yeah, well, maybe they had a point.
It's very hard. I think when you get feedback initially, I think it's very hard to take it on board in a way that is helpful for you. I go one of two ways, which is I kind of almost feel like I accept everything. I kind of go, in an attempt to combat the bias of just thinking, oh, these people are all idiots. I will sometimes sort of take on board too much, if that makes sense. Or you can go the other way and you're like, this is just all nonsense. And I think when you're reading something that you may perceive as criticism as well, or there may be one line that you have perceived as criticism, that becomes very dominant in your mind. And everything else that they've said, which may be positive, gets sort of, it's turned to tiny print if it's even there at all. And sometimes I'll show the feedback I've received about a piece of writing, for example, to my girlfriend, and she'd be like, this was great. And I'd be like, great? What are you talking about? I am furious. And so I think that it can, and of course, written feedback often lacks a tone and it often lacks immediate clarification when you're talking with somebody. So there's so many things around emotions when you're receiving feedback. In general, I have come to the conclusion, basically, you read it or you hear the feedback and you don't really think about it at that moment. You just try and get the feedback as clearly as you can from that person and don't assess it immediately. Your brain, your subconscious will start assessing it and give it time, because in the heat of the moment, oh my God, yeah, just like you know, it's impossible. I think it's impossible.
I think we're definitely seeing a pattern here, which, you know, give it time, let it mull over. You know, I've actually been in situations where I've started to read reviewers' comments and I can't go past the first paragraph because, you know, I'm sort of annoyed, and so I had to come back. So I had to come back to it in chunks.
Yeah. Whatever works.
But yeah. So, you know, going to this issue of emotions clouding versus clarifying, and which I think, yeah, that could work, and how you respond in those situations, and having some rule that you operate, which is, you know, I feel myself just saying platitudes, but, you know, act in haste, repent at leisure. You know, you know, there's a reason why that is such a strong meme, but we could all, you know, bear it in mind a lot more when we're making decisions.
And I think you're right to say that it's hearing it at the right moment, being reminded at the right moment. So somebody listening to this may be hearing it at just the moment they need to hear that. And they won't be going, God, I've never thought of that before. But talking about it, thinking about it from different angles can be really helpful.
And remembering then, so the added bit of thing is this is always work in progress. You know, it's not like, you know, okay, I've got that now and that's job done. Every day, you know, this is something to keep in mind in your decision making.
And that's something that we can leave you to ponder on in the time between now and the next podcast. So thank you, Robert, for today.
Thank you, Jamie.
And thank you so much for listening wherever you are. And we look forward to joining you next time on the Unlocking Behaviour Change podcast.